let's start off with the best picture nominees. Collin, it looks like a three-film race at this point. So if we look at the KALSHI percentages, we have Anora in the lead, 64%, Conclave at 23%, and the Brutalist at 14%. What are your thoughts on the field here and specifically these three films? How you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, so I'll do a little bit of stage setting here before I get into my pick. Um, Months ago, this category, the Brutalist, was the runaway favorite in this category. Probably entering the new year, which was kind of the official start of award season right before the Golden Globes. You could see the Brutalist favored in the minus 250 to minus 300 range. Anora was trending in like the third and fourth position. Uh, and then late January happened. It was the weekend of the NFL's conference championship game while we were watching the Chiefs destroy the Bills' hopes and dreams. Three big award shows happened: the Critics' Choice Awards, the Producers Guild Awards, and the Directors Guild Awards. Honora won all three. It wasn't expected to win all three. I don't think it was expected to win one, but it won all three, and it immediately jumped to the front of the line as the favorite. 12 of the 15 films to win all three of those awards, the CCA, the PGA, and the DGA, have won Best Picture. Honora also won the Writers Guild Awards, importantly, and the only film to win at the guilds for the writers, the producers, and directors and lose Best Picture was Brokeback Mountain. It's only happened once. Now, that has obviously led to a ton of Honora momentum. The other film that has gained momentum at the Brutalist expense is Conclave. It won Best Picture at the BAFTAs. It won the top prize at the Screen Actors Guild. 7 of the 9 films to win both of those have won Best Picture. So whoever wins Best Picture here, it's going to break a streak of certainty in the other direction. There's a recent comparison here in 2018. 3 billboards outside of Ebbings, Missouri, one at the BAFTAs and at the SAG. Shape of Water won both the Producers and Directors Guilds. Best Picture went to Shape of Water. That's a point in Nora's favor. I want to talk a little bit about the Brutalist. As I mentioned, the momentum has gone completely against the Brutalist over the last 2 months. But I think that there is a path here to the Brutalist winning, and I think it is probably worth a sprinkle, even if your primary bet remains on Honora. There's a good chance that the Brutalist cleans up a little bit in some of the technical categories. It's favored to win Best Cinematography, Best Original Score. It has a shot in a couple other categories like Best Film Editing. It's also the favorite for Best Actor, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. The only Best Picture that the Brutalist won at any of these major televised precursor awards was the Golden Globes, which doesn't really have much parallel with the Academy's voting anymore. There is a comparative example of this happening, though. Like I mentioned, 2018 with the BAFTAs and SAG against the PGA and DGA. In 2017, Moonlight. Everyone who watched the Oscars remembers the famous Moonlight La La Land moment. In 2017, Moonlight won at the Golden Globes. Every other award show was won by La La Land, with the exception of I think one was won by Hidden Figures. Entering the Oscars, the day of the Oscars, Moonlight was around plus 550 to win Best Picture. La La Land was in the minus 600 range. And if you go to Gold Derby, which I know you're going to cite quite a bit today, Chris, 35 of the 37 experts and editors at Gold Derby picked La La Land to win Best Picture that year. As we all know, Moonlight won Best Picture. So, like I said, everything is pointing toward a Nora win. I think that in the minus 200 range, a Nora is actually worth a bet, probably the primary portion of whatever you're going to allot toward Best Picture. But the Brutalist sitting in that plus 700 range, I think that's certainly worth a sprinkle. I bought it on KALSHI when it was at 13%, just in case, we see a shocker on Sunday night. I will also say that the correlated odds here don't really make a lot of sense. If you're saying 13% plus 700, based on the percentage chance that it has, that doesn't really add up. But that's going to be the case a lot in Oscar betting. It's a lot different from sports betting. There's a winner, and then everyone else is a loser. And you don't even know how close your bet came to winning. You can't say like, oh, I bet this guy to go over 70 rushing yards and he got 69.5, and there's bad luck happened, so I didn't win. That's not the case in Oscar voting. There is no almosts in Oscar voting. These votes have already happened. We just have to wait to find out. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. There's a lot of uncertainty this year in general. It's one of the most uncertain Oscar years I've come across in a long time. We'll get to that in a lot of categories here. But yeah, Anora, rightful, deserving favorite. I think The Brutalist has a little bit better chance than people expect. Conclave, who knows? I think you're going to talk a little bit about Conclave, but those are my two official positions: are on Anora and a sprinkle on The Brutalist.
I love this because, first of all, that was you just showed everyone exactly why you're on this podcast and featured expert, because I mean that was just like a ridiculous breakdown, just going off top too. So I approach this a little bit different, and the way I approach it is by kind of treating Gold Derby as the quote unquote sharps, to kind of draw another one of those parallels between sports betting. Now, in real sports betting, I'm never following sharps or anything. Like I'm just doing my own thing, but I know that some people may look at, you know, what they're doing, or maybe even consider myself a sharp. So I get that there's people spending time looking at this stuff, and those opinions, being able to synthesize those, are extremely valuable. And so what I've done is I've actually, every year I run the numbers and keep adding to my model on the Gold Derby predictions themselves, because you have experts, you have editors, you have top 24 users from the year before, all, and then just every user on the site, more like the, you know, the general public or the squares, so to speak. Everything is tracked, and you can kind of see, and it's been tracked for over a decade now. So it starts to really kind of reveal, you know, where the consensus, you know, may be off, where the experts are really sharp, and you shouldn't go against them, and you can kind of put some numbers to it. And that's what you really need to do. Is this you know, betting these awards, it's really hard to find those like true odds, right? Like it's really hard to prove. Like, we don't see what's going on behind the scenes. Only, I guess, what is it, PricewaterhouseCoopers or whoever does it, they're the only ones that get to see that. So what I've found is with Best Picture, it's really fascinating because the consensus favorite, which would be Anora, is on a 4-year win streak in terms of Gold Derby, meaning, like, you know, the number one film that all the experts had as the number one consensus wise, it's won 4 years in a row. However, the previous 5, the number 2, the runner-up, essentially, the projected runner-up, won each of those. So it went from, you know, the upset for 5 straight years to the favorite for 4 straight years. But I think we could see it go back to being an upset again. And the reason I do is because if you look at, and I do think Anora should be the favorite, I just think it's overvalued. And I think Conclave is a little bit undervalued, because when you look at The Brutalist also factoring in, and remember, it's a preferential ballot. I think there's a real chance that, you know, with Conclave, you know, getting more nominations than Anora, but not getting that director nomination, it might be one of those weird years where, like, there starts to be these correlated ways of voting among the voting body, where they're going to say, okay, you know, both of these films are kind of even to us, so we're going to reward Anora and, you know, and Baker for director. But we've seen them kind of go a little bit off the map sometimes when there's just like a good film that doesn't fit the standard precursor, you know, things we've kind of come to know in the past. And you kind of alluded to it with, yeah, you have a 12 and 15 trend for Anora, but you also have a 7 and 9 trend for Conclave. So I just think it's a little bit more of a toss-up, especially when you consider the preferential ballot, especially when you consider that there's this third film kind of hanging around that could, you know, hurt the favorite, I think, more in a case like this. So I'm going to go with Conclave at plus 240. That's where I'm seeing the value, you know, in terms of Gold Derby. You have about 30 to 35%, a little under, you know, at Gold Derby taking Conclave. And what you see too is the users at Gold Derby, like, that means like anyone who wants, like, I could go and you know, put in a vote and put my preferential order in. Anyone can, but for the actual experts on the site, it's about double what just the general public thinks. So I do think Conclave has been a little bit underrated in a year where I don't think there's that true runaway best picture nominee. Like just the fact that there's three, the fact that, as you mentioned, at different points in the season, different films have been at the top. And even The Brutalist, I think, there's some kind of artificial deflation because, who knows? It's hard to predict how an entire voting body is going to react to some scandal that may or may not mean anything, as far as that AI stuff. So I just think there's a lot of uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, I tend to shy away from the juiced up odds, and I tend to try to go for the long shot. So I'm with you on The Brutalist. And for people that are, listening to this pod and not really familiar with betting, to listen to it because you want to find some Oscars picks, when Collin says, sprinkle a little on The Brutalist, that means you can take your Anora or your Conclave at whatever odds, and let's say you put, $10 on your main pick, you can still put, let's say, $2 on The Brutalist, and because you're getting paid out 7-1, if you're essentially covered in 2 out of the 3 scenarios, you just have to eliminate the one. And for me, I'm just going with the 2+ money ones. That's just with the uncertainty again. That's just how I'm playing it. I do think Anora should be the favorite. I just think it should be a little bit closer to a toss up, and they kind of have it running away, as is the case with these kind of markets where you don't know the true odds. But that's my kind of reasoning there. But
yeah,
this is a fun one this year with best.
Yeah, I will say, like if you're the most common way I think people wager on the Oscars is in pools. You're picking winners. To be clear, if I'm in an Oscar pool, I'm picking Anora to win Best Picture because Anora has the highest probability chance of winning. Maybe you want to go a little bit outside the box. You think everyone's going to pick Anora. That's where I would pivot to maybe the Conclaves or the Brutalists. I think that there is and in Oscar betting in general, upsets are pretty rare at the Oscars. Out of 23 categories or whatever, you might see 2 to 4 a year. The key is just identifying where those upsets are going to be. And so that's where you sprinkle on a couple of underdogs that you think might be a little undervalued, because that's where because you're just looking to find those underdogs. And this year in particular, as I alluded to kind of at the top, I think we could see even more upsets just because there is more uncertainty, especially across like probably the top 4 categories here. There's no sure thing in picture, director, or either of the 2 top acting categories. And I can't remember the last time that was the case entering the weekend of the Oscars.